Hi and welcome to today's episode of Women's Health Unwrapped. I'm joined today by guest Lucy Wilde, and I know this is going to be such an interesting conversation. We are talking about identity as a woman, but how that identity can be affected when you become a mother. Now, I had a look online before I joined the conversation with Lucy and found that there's a stat from quite a recent survey which states that 62% of women in the UK say that they felt like they'd lost part of their identity when they became a mum. So that's really staggering, isn't it? Like 2/3 of women are feeling like that. And if you have become a mum, if you've had that first baby, and maybe it's happened again. I've only got one, so I don't know if this happens in slightly different ways on a second, third, or more child. But certainly for me, and I think lots of women, you look forward to having that first baby and imagine everything being perfect. And then suddenly your whole world and sense of being becomes mum or mam, where I'm from. That feeling that everything is about feeding, changing, cleaning, and worrying, and that your responsibility for existing is now being a mother. So I think there's so much that we're going to unwrap there that I do think is relevant for every woman, not just those who have been mothers, although we are talking about it through that lens. And the reason why I really wanted to chat about this with Lucy is because I do believe that this is something that can really arise and hit you in midlife when we are in that perimenopause stage. So we're going to dig into all of that as well. So welcome to the podcast, Lucy.
Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here, and I'm excited too about all the things we're going to go into. Yeah, and I love where you've started with that, really, because it can be so profound. And I think as women and mothers, we can think that we're meant to take it all, shoulder it all. If we're lucky enough, we've got a wonderful partner that can support us. For me, that didn't happen when I had my daughter, but I, as in her dad, wasn't super supportive. But my boyfriend now is incredible. Like, I don't think we will, but I wish we could have another baby because I know it would be so much better second time round. But yeah, and I think a lot of women, I found this through my personal and professional life, feel like they're wrong. And I think society doesn't support us to think otherwise, really. We can easily fault ourselves. And I found through the incredible growth I've gone through in the last 5 years since leaving my husband and other traumas, I've learned to know that I'm not fucking wrong. Of course, I'm wrong about some things, but, I'm not going to apologize at the drop of a hat for taking up space.
Yeah, that's so powerful. So I said there's so much that we can unpack, and I'm looking forward to this personally because my experience wasn't easy becoming a mother either. So yeah, we'll see how the conversation flows and what I can contribute to the conversation as well. But just to get us started, I'd love to know from you, like right now, what would you say is your most impactful habit that helps to keep you balanced and well?
That is sleep, really good quality sleep. It
Right.
really is. And I feel very grateful. And it's funny, when I say this on my socials or maybe my newsletter, I feel a little bit paranoid that people are going to go like, oh yeah, like that's possible, because I have a lot of clients and friends who have very young children and with older children as well, like my daughter's age, she's 10 now. But yeah, sleep. I have my daughter half the time, so I'm able to sleep in on certain days when I don't have work set early. And also over Christmas, I really prioritized so much sleep, and it was incredible. It was so restorative. And two people have said to me, "You look really well recently." And I'm like, oh, I think it's due to a number of things, but sleep is going to be one of them for sure. Like early nights, I go to bed at the same time as my daughter sometimes. And I'm slightly amazed at how much I can sleep when given the opportunity. But I'm not actually going to doubt myself. I'm going to be compassionate and acknowledge that my body needs that rest for whatever reason.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. And I am slightly envious because sleep has been my biggest pillar of health to improve for the last 3 or 4 years since I came into this space. Because since I became a mother, funny enough, or even since I became pregnant, actually, my sleep went on a massive roller coaster journey. And sadly, it's something that I do still struggle with. But I appreciate the value of sleep. And so I do
Mm,
have very good habits and rituals in terms of preparing for sleep on an evening, but also I understand those things that we do from the second we literally wake up on a morning that also impact how well we sleep on a night. And you're right. I think for many women, it's something that wrongly takes a very far back seat, doesn't it? You
yeah,
know, when you do become a mother, especially,
yeah.
you just have this built-in instinct to wake up the second the baby cries, or even the toddler or old child, and then
Mm,
those things become habits that mean for many of us we're so used to broken sleep that it just
mm.
becomes habitual and the norm for us, doesn't it?
It does. And you're so right. And I feel like if you were to ask me the same question 6 months ago, it would have been different. I think it would have
Mm.
been soothing my nervous system, because I've become aware that my nervous system, due to trauma and things, is or can be quite heightened at times. And it takes work to regularly sort of soothe myself in different ways, whether it's just going about my day at a slower pace or incorporating gorgeous restorative yoga. I might put I love putting the fairy lights on every evening, but like putting those on, having a nice practice of my own, maybe. And I've just recently bought a candle, and it's so lovely to have this ritual of lighting a candle. It feels really spiritual, to be honest, pretty
Mm.
sacred. But yeah, sleep, as you say, it really can fall so far back, so much so. And obviously, it's debilitating when you're incredibly sleep deprived. Like, a friend of mine was just like, I can't even explain how exhausted I am. And I think we get used to that. And even if you're not a mum, I think it's become trendy, or it was trendy a while ago, to be like, yeah, I'm shattered, but I'm just pushing on. But
Yeah.
I haven't read it yet, but there's a book on sleep, like why we sleep, I think it's called. And I want to listen to it or read it at some point
Mm.
to learn more about it. But I mean, it's obvious, but I think men and women of any age and any kind of stage of life can let it drop. It does matter. And obviously, I'm not judging and I'm not forcing people to make decisions that are tricky, but it really, for me, it's really had a huge impact. And I think when you've got little kids, it's so easy to go, oh, no, I need to tidy. And I do think it's not taken me 10 years, because I was more comfortable with it a while ago, but it can take us many years to become more comfortable with rest, full stop. So to literally sit back and give ourselves permission to pause. I say that in my yoga classes a lot. Give yourself, if you can, permission to pause, because sometimes everyone around us is saying, take a minute, relax. And it's down to us and the internal chatter to go, oh, yeah, I can, can't I?
Yeah, exactly. I have that book. It's Matthew Walker. He's
Thanks.
fantastic. If you listen to him on podcasts, and he did a TED talk quite a long time ago, one of the, real original type of TED talks.
Mm,
It is brilliant. And some of the stats he shares in there for men and women around the impact of not enough quality sleep, because that's the key word, quality.
mm,
It's astounding, how it impacts our brains, every
mm,
part of our body, but it is a real contributor to poor health and disease as we age. A lot
mm.
of those things we think are inevitable parts of aging, which are actually, contributed to by our lifestyles. So sleep being a big thing, stress, our diet and exercise,
Yeah.
so on. So yeah, and I think something you mentioned there as well about like not judging people for not having good sleep and so on is really important, because yeah, we're all at different seasons of our life, and this is something I always advocate and talk about in my messaging is, if someone is a younger parent, for example, there is a reality to that. You're probably not going to have great sleep, but then hone in more on those other pillars like your nutrition or movement or the stress or the mindset. Those are my five together.
Yes.
Is,
Love that.
we're not always able to do all of those things at the same time.
Mm,
And there is a reality to when you are a parent of younger children that life is different to how it will be when they're older. My daughter was just 17 last week. And so my life is very different now to how it was when she was 7 or 2.
mm.
Things have just shifted so much, and especially because I divorced from her dad a few years ago. And so, now she's older as well. She's very independent about who she spends time with, and does spend a lot with both of us. So, I have that freedom when she isn't with me, which I didn't have when she was younger and she was here full time, So,
Mm,
yeah, we all have to find what we need to focus on more right now. And as you said, 6 months ago, it might have been the nervous system and really tapping into what that meant for you.
mm,
Whereas now that's progressed and perhaps is better balanced, and
yeah.
sleep is a focus. So yeah, I love that. And I think that leads us really nicely to becoming a mother, and how much is impacted in
Mm,
the physical sense with things like sleep. And for many of us, we've been working full time and in a career, and then we
mm,
go on this maternity leave, which I remember preparing to do and asking a friend who had her baby 2 months before my due date, and said, but what do you do with yourself all day? And she literally laughed and just said, Nicola, I can't even tell you, just wait. Because I was worried that I was going to feel bored, but also like really unfulfilled, not
mm,
having those like goals at work, and the things that got you moving and flowing every day, and so
yeah.
on. So yeah, so obviously we've got the practicalities of what motherhood brings, but then there is that side of it as well that just
Mm,
shifts something, because we are suddenly responsible for this
mm,
tiny human being. So yeah,
yeah.
talk to me a bit then about your experience, and why you have now become an expert in this to help other women.
Mm, I'm so passionate about it. Yeah. Before I go into that, I feel like I just want to touch on sleep a tiny bit more, because I feel like there is an assumption sometimes that when our kids are older and leave the nest, so to speak, that everything's easier. And I was saying to my boyfriend recently how they don't leave our heart and mind, though, do they? So it's not as if all duties are gone. And when I was in labour, because it went on for several days, my mum didn't sleep well. She had her phone by her pillow, and then eventually I asked her to come, and she travelled down from Reading to Brighton, and got there in time before the next stage of labour, which was insane. But, I think, and if our children have any type of trouble, we're going to think about them, and it may impact our sleep. So even if your kid's a 30-year-old, 40-year-old, it can still impact us. So it's something that is never good to judge about, because it's not
Mm.
always a quick fix. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but thank you. Yeah, motherhood is and matrescence are huge passions of mine to work in this area, and it does change you on every level, as you've said. And I remember when we spoke a few months ago, I introduced you to this word, matrescence. And for the listeners who don't know this word, and the majority of women and people don't, it is the transition that you go through when you become a mum. But it starts in pregnancy. It starts when you begin to think of having another being to look after, when you begin to think of someone else as well as yourself and as well as your partner, so perhaps. And it continues. It doesn't really end, because you've got always this moving target. Like, your child is always changing and evolving, and so are you. For me, I feel like perimenopause might be sometime in the next few years, and my daughter's I was going to say prepubescent, but she's into puberty now. So it's this both moving, and therefore it's not just done in the first couple of years of motherhood, which I think a lot of people think, which is fair enough, because that is the huge thing. When you've grown this baby, or adopted, of course, and then you're transitioning to this life with another being, everything shifts. So if you've grown the baby, there are all sorts of biological shifts. But even if you haven't, even if you've adopted, there it's gorgeous to hear this, the research about how your brain shifts and how your body will really place this being so high on so high in importance. It matters to you. Like, this being takes up a huge part of your heart, let's say. And it's lovely to witness that in dads. And yeah, so motherhood and matrescence, as you said, can really, how do I describe this? Just, I was going to say, like, crack you open. Yeah, that really is the word that I would say is what happened for me and many mums I know, because it is in a spiritual sense. And I know that some people might sort of switch off to that word, but it's such a huge journey. It teaches you so much. And even if you're not spiritual, I think it's great to acknowledge how huge it is. And again, society doesn't tell us the depth and the hugeness of parenthood. And my whole sort of flaming torch in this work is that parents aren't respected and revered enough. And it's obvious sort of in systemic issues that there isn't enough leave, there isn't enough equality in workplaces for those who need to be there for their kids. And if we think about it, we are bringing up the next generation. It matters so, so much. So it kind of, I say this quite regularly, but it blows my mind we haven't got to this, and it's 2025 now. We haven't got to this sooner. And this work is like, matrescence is quite unknown. Patrescence is the dad side of things, and that's relatively unknown. But it's an incredible honor to be working on this. And I love it. It's wonderful. You can see when people realize what it means and go into it and acknowledge that, oh, that's why I felt like everything was new and I didn't know myself, because you're shifting. Your identity is shifting.
Mm-hmm. And so how did your identity shift, and at what point were you aware that that was actually happening?
I became aware of matrescence when my daughter was 5, so 5 years ago now. And I remember hearing a podcast with my teacher, my matrescence teacher, Amy Taylor Kabaz, and then ordering her book and devouring the book and just being like, oh my gosh. And I think what really dawned on me was the fact that I wasn't wrong, because I'd always been accused of being sensitive and being of taking things the wrong way and being, like I say, kind of wrong in some way. But it wasn't that. And it was incredibly validating, to say the least. And yeah, so I'm really grateful that I found out when my daughter was only 5. And of course, people might find out at different ages when their children are younger or much, much older. And there are many women on the course who kind of have got a newborn in their hands. You know, they're learning very, very early on. I think the sooner the better if you can, but it doesn't matter when you learn. I think what's really lovely is when I've done talks about matrescence, sometimes there's been mums and babies there, mums and toddlers, and then one of the ladies' mums has come along, so someone my mum's age roughly, and she's come up to me at the end and said, wow, if only I knew about this. And it's really moving, because whatever it, not, I have to say, not everyone feels validated. Not everyone takes it as this massive wow lesson and learning on the spot. And it, even if it's just a planted seed, then I think it's helpful. But yeah, it was 5 years old, when Tilly was 5, that I began to sort of unravel how difficult the early stages of motherhood were. Not just because of an unsupportive partner at home, not just because of birth trauma, but because I was going through matrescence. And if we think about it, adolescence is so fucking difficult at times. And of course, these things bring beautiful adaptations in the body and mind and all sorts, but it's challenging. And even if it's natural, it's challenging. And we kind of need a supportive hand to say, yeah, I get it. This is what you're going through.
Yeah, it's so powerful, isn't it? And so when we talk about your identity shifting, let's really simplify this. Like, what do you see, both from your own experience with your personal matrescence, but also with people you work with now? Like, what are those key parts of your identity that are changing as you become a mother? And I loved as well how you highlighted this isn't just for those who've grown the baby themselves, but who adopt. That matrescence stage of life, like what is it that's really changing when we talk about your identity shifting?
I think it's knowing that your body is so important to another being, and that it's okay to feel grief or annoyance or something else, that you don't have autonomy anymore. I think that's one of them, you know. And for me, I think as a fitness professional, I was really blown away and not comfortable, particularly in my body, being more curvaceous, because I'd always been quite petite, not very big boobs. And so to be much more curvy with much bigger boobs, and they grew so early on in pregnancy as well. Like I was just, yeah, it was really strange having to wear 2 bras and that kind of thing. So getting used to your body. And the thing is, a lot of people said, oh, I bet your husband likes them. I don't fucking care. It's my body. I'm not comfortable in this body. And and yeah, so thankfully, like my boobs shrank back, but that's one of the huge ones. And I'm really glad I brought that up because I think being a fitness professional and working with women for different goals they've had over the last many years, I have witnessed people saying, oh, at least this, at least that. Yeah, at least you're healthy and at least whatever. But the fact is, you don't feel comfortable in your body. And that's okay to express and that's okay to grieve. You know, a client of mine has, um, she's been recovering from an injury and she was upset recently. And I said, it is okay to grieve what you were able to do. You know,
Mm.
it might be that she can do it again. It might be that she can't, but she was frustrated with herself that she couldn't do certain yoga poses. And it was just, yeah, quite heart wrenching, really. And we're not given really permission to, as I say, to grieve. And I think when we think about grief in parenthood, it can sound so. I think a lot of people are very uncomfortable with grief full stop. But if you think about in early parenthood, we're probably likely to be grieving the kind of ease of life that we had before. Of course, we don't regret having this gorgeous being that's in our arms and we adore it. But it's like, obviously, you know this, the ease of going to anything without a baby and a changing bag in tow, or if your partner's at home, if you have a partner with the baby, the ease of leaving, you know, the baby might scream for you because they want you, and it's tricky for you to go out because you're feeling guilty. And that's another thing to do with the hormones. You know, we are attached to our child, and it's not a needy baby and it's not a needy mum. You have grown potentially, as I say, perhaps there's an adoption that's gone on, but you're linked for that reason. It's not just a clinginess. And that's another thing I think is common. I think partners can assume that they should be more separate, but actually you're going to feel very intertwined. And I think when I had birth trauma, I didn't want Tilly to not be by my side for quite a long while because we'd been through quite an ordeal together, and for her to be separate to me was quite upsetting. And she needed me a lot as well, but there can be all sorts of accusations, I feel. But to come back to your question, another way that you feel that you change, it's how I think it's how you're seen in society. Yeah, that's a huge one, and how it's how you're seen and how you see society, because you see all sorts of different things when you become a parent. My teacher, Amy Taylor Kabaz, said we move from me to we, and that explains why you can be a lot more emotional about all sorts, like seeing a film about a child that suffers, or you know, even just the puppy or adverts. You know, I don't know if it's Andrex anymore or that kind of thing, but you know, we can be stirred by things. But the way society sees us, that's quite upsetting when you hear sort of mums say, I feel so fucking unseen. And I'm like, you're doing the most important job. And it's just unbelievable that you feel unseen.
Mm.
And it's very
Yeah.
real. They do. And I get that
Hmm.
because we're not respected and revered enough.
Mm. Oh, yeah, it's so powerful. So much of what you said there I do totally resonate with. And actually, I could feel myself getting a bit emotional because
Yeah.
I didn't know any of this stuff. And I think, again, you were set up to have the baby and everything to be rosy and shiny and wonderful and magical and so on. And then you have the baby, and whether you've had a difficult labour or not, things have shifted, often in such a big way,
Mm.
and you are suddenly, responsible for your baby, and you have all sorts going on
Yes.
hormonally often as well.
Yes.
And society has put on us this expectation of bouncing back. We've all seen the celebrities over the years in magazines, now social media, and the
Mm.
judgment about how they physically look and
Mm.
also how they're living their life. Like, they're out at this event 1 week after giving birth and
Yeah.
shining and so on. God,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was still going to Weight Watchers 6 months on in my maternity jeans, feeling pretty crap a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And so I think, yeah, there's all of that societal expectation that you put on yourself. And again, this isn't exclusive to motherhood. I do think generally as women, from a young age, we have these beliefs instilled in us about how we should look, how we should be working, how we should be living, the things we should be doing. And I think all of the conversation, but I think the world we live in today is making that even more so, you know, the speed of everything with technology and so on.
Definitely.
And then, you know, you have this baby and things feel tough. And then you have those moments often where you are struggling and you just feel overwhelmed. But then you put this huge, immense guilt and shame onto yourself, don't you? You're like, well, why can't I cope? And why am I thinking, oh God, it would be easier if I was just back at work? Or even
Yeah.
those fleeting thoughts of, I'm not sure whether I did the right thing having a baby. You know, I'm sure we've
Yeah.
all had those moments,
Yeah.
as you say, where we're grieving. And you don't know that that's natural because nobody teaches us that stuff. And funny enough, as we're recording this, I've just had a podcast episode come out where I was a guest for someone else who talks about becoming a mother and the whole journey of pregnancy and having a baby naturally. And I was so grateful that I got to share my story because I'd never done that before. And I got really emotional sharing that because I hadn't been given that space to really reflect on it like that before. And that awoke something in me,
Yeah.
which is why then I was interested in chatting with you, because I thought this is something that we just put like very down, don't we? We quash it down when we haven't got that awareness of just get on with it, you know, and we busy ourselves. And this is another thing, we're obviously still taking on the brunt of domestic responsibilities, the parenting, and then many of us go back to work, often full time, when the child is quite young. And, you know, society again expects us to do that. But then there's judgment of, oh, well, who's looking after the baby? Is dad looking, you know, as though it's dad's doing you a favor looking after it, and all of that kind of crap that goes with it. Yeah. And then you just, as you say, like carry so much. And I think what's so interesting and missed as well is that big shift we are having hormonally if we have biologically given birth, because, you know, as women, we have, as you mentioned, adolescence, puberty, that big season of life where our hormones are starting to surge and come in and shift things. And then we have that if we go through pregnancy. And then we have it when we hit the menopause stage of life, and perimenopause being that big run up of hormonal turbulence. And yet in pregnancy, we aren't really explained what's going to happen once we've given birth to our hormones. And that just has such, you know, an impact on our brains and on our whole balance in terms of being a human, that together with the shift of life and responsibility just is basically, I don't want to say a recipe for disaster, but together it's like the perfect storm, isn't it? There's so much going on there, but we are expected to, you know, I had a very difficult labour. And I had what's called a Keelan's delivery. So it was forceps, but not where they pulled the baby. They turned the baby and she slipped back, so they turned her again. And I'd had a full spinal block. And I had her at 6:30 in the morning, and I don't remember what time. My husband, at the time he left and gone home, and it was the afternoon, and she'd never fed. And I couldn't move. And so I rang the buzzer, and the midwife came and said, yeah, well, I need to feed the baby because she hasn't fed, and I think I must have fallen asleep. Yeah, well, just get the baby at the bottom of the bed in the little plastic cot thing. I said, well, yeah, but I can't move. I literally can't feel anything. Oh, right. Well, so, okay. And she wheeled it to the side and I said, there you go. And I was like, but I can't even sit up. Well, you can move the bed. And it was just this, you know, start of, well, you are the mother. Get on with it. It's your responsibility. And that's just huge, isn't it?
It really is. Oh, it makes me so emotional as well. Just really sort of, I feel really tender for all the people who've been treated similar, you know, and the ridiculous things that I feel like we need to shed as women, like to let go of the bullshit labels that we're given and the duties that aren't all ours. I think I mentioned it on my socials the other day, but I witnessed a lady talking recently about her grown-up children trying to blame her for something, and this sort of not kind attack, let's say verbally, came from the toxic ex-partner, the dad figure, and And then I said to her, please know that you don't have to take that on, because not everything is your responsibility. We are made to think otherwise. And I think it's up to us at any point to go, it's not mine. There is the martyr motherhood. Is it martyr? Yeah, we can become martyr mothers, but it's up to us to do the work to go. And obviously, that's in a way, to do the work is an extra responsibility, whether it's therapy or learning, growth, whatever. And it might be that you capture snippets of podcasts or get to read some literature to help you learn these things. But if you don't do those things, and if you're just kind of thrown into motherhood, let's say, you do easily take on this stuff, and the weight on your shoulders is just huge. And yeah, I just feel so, I really want to say to you, like, just, I love that you've been able to share your story on a podcast or in general, because I think it is important. Not everyone will want to, for sure. I know some people like to put things away, and there's no judgment of that. But I think it can just be so helpful to tell our birth story. And what I think if I had many versions of me, I would hold circles regularly, just giving women space to talk, mothers space to talk, women, yeah, and mothers, because you can see when given the opportunity, it is something that just flows. Someone is comfortable, well, fairly comfortable talking about themselves, because I find a lot of people say, oh, sorry for rambling, sorry for, for taking up space. And that's why one of my podcasts, my own podcast episodes, is about taking up space. Because when I say to my yogis sometimes, like, space, take up space, spreading your arms wide, feet wide, but be okay with standing your ground, having a conversation with someone, and knowing that you don't need to apologize for your words. Do you know what I mean? Because I think a lot of us can think, oh God, I went on a bit, but like, your words are valid. And I think we can feel that as women and mothers. And of course, men can feel it too. But yeah, it's, as you say, I'm just sort of picturing what you said about you being in hospital with the baby. Like, it's so tragic when you think a midwife would be a really loving character and they're not. And I get that that is for reasons where we can't help necessarily. It might be stuff at home that makes someone grumpy when they're at work, that kind of thing. And I think it's like any profession. Someone can be good and really passionate, and someone can just kind of turn up and not really care. But it really fucking matters to treat parents well. And I think I was going to say I'm sick of it, and I am, but like, it's like a torch that I run with to help support women and families, really, because this word, coming back to briefly, matrescence, the word's existed since 1973, but it's only been added to the dictionary 3 years ago. Yeah. And if it was, surely, like, I am a raging feminist, and I'm very, very comfortable with rage as well, because it has a place. It is, no doubt, it would have been in the dictionary earlier if it was a man's thing. It's just sad that these things are tended to so little. But I was just going to say, do you mind if I swear?
No, go ahead.
Okay, cool. I was just going to say, like, fuck me, it makes such a difference to a woman's life when they learn that they're going through something biological, that they aren't too sensitive or whatever, And if, like, I own that I'm a sensitive person now. Like, I don't think it's a bad thing. Someone tries to insult me, I'm like, I don't care what you've just said. If you think I'm sensitive, you're right. Yes. Yeah. I'm going off on a passionate something or other. Feel free
That's
to rein
fine.
me in.
No, I love it. I love it. And what you're talking about here with regard to becoming a mother and that stage of life, we are also, and this is my world, going through that in midlife. And this is where the two completely align, but we aren't there yet in terms of realizing this out in society, even in the healthcare system. And, you said, like, we are biologically changing, things are happening, life is different. And you mentioned about taking up space as well. And I was thinking, as you said that, I think when you are or become a parent, you are empowered. It's like, I'm a mother, I've got a child, I'm responsible, I can do this. And actually it is, for me, it was the first time in my life that I ever really felt a bit of that ignition within me that was like, God, I'm powerful. Amazing. But at the same time, I think we're made to feel small because we are put in that box of, oh, don't share that terrible birth story. Nobody wants to
Yes.
know about labour. Like, just
Yes.
enjoy the baby and talk about whether they're smiling or how many
Yes.
poos they have and all of that stuff. You know, and it's like, so
Yes.
it's almost like we're made to not take up that space that actually we're bloody entitled to as women who've become a mother. You know, so
Mm.
there's that. And I think what's very similar is menopause has been the same and only now is just
Yeah.
starting to get noisy, build that
Mm.
awareness, momentum around. Actually, why should we just keep our mouths shut and get on with it and like shoulders back, toughen up, do it the way our grands did it, you know, and probably most of our mothers, where it was just like, don't talk about it. You're a woman, get on with it. This is just another part of life, like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
suffer in silence sort of thing. And we're starting to realize that that isn't right, and nor is that healthy. And I
No.
think that's the link, is it's the same becoming a
Mm.
mother. It's not healthy to not share those fears, doubts, worries, concerns, guilt, shame, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, it's not good. And as you focus on, that becomes stored trauma, which I think then when our hormones start to become more disruptive and irregular.
Mm. Mm.
I talk about juggling the balls. Like, we've been able to keep those balls juggling, and many of us are only just about keeping them in the air. You know, we're doing all of the things that motherhood and being a
Mm.
human requires. And then that hormonal imbalance suddenly just means that we can't. And we know now our brain is changing through that
Yeah.
perimenopause and menopause season of life. Other
Yeah.
things are happening, often lots of things for many women. And so we have that part of our brain that is affected with the hormonal changes that starts to go, no, I'm not going to just do this. And I think if you have got, if you're carrying those changes from becoming a mother that you never acknowledged and held space for, I think that's where you see, you know, lots of women are going, hang on,
Mm.
I don't want to be this dog's body anymore, or I don't actually want to be just a mother. Like, I love
Mm.
being a mother, don't get me wrong, but I've been just a mother for however many years. And
Mm.
now it's not that, oh, this relationship doesn't work, or that
Yeah.
career isn't for me. And,
Yeah.
you know, we see you hit that crossroads, which and I'm trying to help women see that can be a real positive and amazing opportunity in life, like it was for me at 45, to go, this isn't how I'm going to live the rest of my life, because it's only going to go one way, and that's down. So let's
Mm.
get out of the marriage, let's change career, which I was kind of forced to do, but let's learn how to actually stop surviving and
Mm.
live, because I started to have those shifts that made me realize I had to do something, or it was only going to get worse. And so I think,
Mm.
yeah, it's really interesting to maybe connect them in that way.
Yeah.
And I guess there's, if you go further back, and I don't have any scientific proof of this, this is just coming out of my mind as we're chatting. You know, we see how girls change in puberty, and also what can be difficult for them and challenging that isn't
Mm.
dealt with, that again comes up in later life, you know,
Yeah.
where they
Yeah.
haven't just had that knowledge, I guess, and support of working out, well, I'm changing and this is okay, and this is now what I feel and who I am, and so on. So yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
so fascinating, isn't it?
It is. It really is. And I just want to sort of really celebrate you and how lovely it is to witness like what you just shared about like coming out of the relationship and finding yourself and making those decisions for you. Because I think that's so empowering. And I'm picturing like you with a client or me with a client, and again, I feel like it's great to explicitly say there is no judgment, but I'm picturing sitting with a woman who doesn't know that A, she can take up space, and B, it's okay to rock the fucking boat, you know, and to be the big bold woman who decides to make career or personal life changes that other people might gasp at, you know. As we kind of know, I think as we get older we give less fucks, but like I began to give less fucks. I mean, I'm 41 now, but I suppose probably a year out of the because there were two toxic relationships. A year out of that, I began to kind of hold my own more and feel a bit more like a shield maiden, which was really empowering. But I think we're so used to thinking that we need to, as you say, stay small and not upset people. And gosh, that's almost another topic, really, isn't it? Talking about upsetting people because of the sort of cancel culture that we live in. I think it's incredibly important to be accountable for when we can apologize. But like, I'm super aware because of the horrible people I've been exposed to being with, narcissists and the like. I'm happy to say that's your stuff. I know that that is not mine. So thank you, but you don't need to accuse me of that. I think it's really important if we get the time to do the work, and sometimes it's studies or therapy, or for me, it's like the life experiences I've been through have forced me to be very shield maiden like at times. I won't put up with shit after being through physical, emotional abuse. And and yeah, it's so much about that. And I was saying to a friend yesterday, it might be because she was talking about feeling guilty about saying what she wanted to do for her birthday, because her family was putting pressure on her to like meet up with her. And I said, do what you want on your birthday. And I said, like, it might take a while to build your nervous system to have these awkward conversations or to witness a shitty look from someone, but when you can, it's very rewarding to go, don't care, it doesn't suit me or my daughter. That's what I would be saying. And I do care, of course. I don't want to outwardly upset people, but it comes to a point where we're done with people pleasing and we just need to fucking nurture ourselves, after giving in all the ways to anyone that wants to kind of take some kind of energy from us, because as women, we're so used to people pleasing. And if men do this too, but women, and I've read this in a book, it's not just my own thoughts, and the book is by Emily and Amelia Nagoski, and it's called Burnout. It's there on my shelf. We are conditioned to, and I think probably naturally, will give in the form of energy, love, attention. And so it's up to us to go, oh, I can't, and I don't have the capacity, even if it seems simple. And I think a quote that really fucking dawned on me how big it was a few years ago now was, you might have the time, but not the capacity. You might have the time, but not the capacity. And I think for me, I pictured myself as a new mum with people who wanted to talk to me, but I was reeling from birth trauma, struggling at home, uncomfortable in my body, and I didn't have the space to hold a conversation. And I think that's so valid at any stage of life, for whatever reason, where we are in our cycle, whether we've had a tough day or whether we just want peace and don't want to pay attention to our phone. It's so good to say, I don't have capacity, I don't want to. And it's okay to say you don't want to. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, totally. And yet, again, so many women are people pleasers. And maybe if you don't identify as a people pleaser, get curious about that. And maybe it's not purely in the sense of people when that term's used. It can be
Yeah.
with anything, even pleasing yourself in some respect.
Yes.
If you are just, yeah, I'll do that.
Yes.
And again, everything that you say yes to means you say no to something else, and often those no's are you. And you having that space to get to know yourself, because I do think that's something, which, to circle us back to identity, is what many midlife women come to that crossroads with, is I actually don't know who I am. And they don't know what their values are, what they're passionate about, what their interests are, because again, in that motherhood journey, we've become the mother, and we often have become friends with other kids' parents who perhaps we don't really like and wouldn't choose as friends, and we do the school and the activity stuff and so on and so on. And we're not stepping up for what we need. And my kind of closing remark on this, before I want to get some steps from you, Lucy, to help someone around building habits for this, but is whatever stage of life you're at now, and if you are on the younger side of life, not having reached perimenopause yet, is start now to realise the value you have and how important it is to know what you need. Because I see, sadly, women who reach perimenopause or even beyond have pushed through it, and things have just crumbled apart massively, where they are in crisis, really, because they've just kept going as it was. So, you know, really knowing that you need to protect your health, and that isn't something you should feel guilty for, which is a big thing to work on for many women, and
Mm.
that it is actually a
Mm.
positive thing to do, to model to your children or child,
Yeah.
in my case, like what it means to look after yourself in every sense, you know, and how you speak to yourself, that mindset piece, but also the
Mm.
health habits and so on. So yeah,
Yeah.
Lucy, I'd love for you, as I do with all guests, to get some tips to help the listener improve this area of their health. So let's focus on, you know, that identity, supporting yourself, knowing who you are
Yeah.
at whatever stage of life, and whether you are or not a mother. Hopefully I really hope you've got something from the conversation. But yeah, what would be 3 steps you'd suggest someone take to begin building some better habits to support themselves?
I've got my 3 tips to share, but I just want to sort of say how it is so important to know yourself. And I feel really grateful that I have I have become incredibly aware of who I am and what I like and what I don't like and what I do or don't stand for. And actually, when I went to see Frozen 2 in 2019 or 2020, I think it was, I cried when one of the ladies, Elsa, I don't know, sings Show Yourself, because that
Yeah.
was really fucking moving for me. Yeah. So my 3 tips is, well, number 1 is do at least one thing that lights you up.
Ooh.
Do at least one thing that lights you up and allows you to be creative or an artist in some way. Because I think we are creative in some way. We might hopefully not have been sort of shamed or made fun of into thinking that whether it was a song or a dance or an art piece we did when we were younger wasn't very good, and we've lost confidence. But it's great to allow ourselves to kind of flow in an arty way. And for me, most recently, that's been creating things through burlesque, which has been really
Oh.
empowering. And I love that. So yeah, one thing that lights you up. Next is work on your boundaries so that you can protect your time, your energy, your headspace with less unwanted input.
I like that. And I'm just going to kind of mention social media in your phone around boundaries, because I think a lot of people do go straight to boundaries of saying no to other people or things. But
Mm.
actually, those boundaries in terms of what you do with
Yeah.
your time,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the phone is a big thing that many women are using, especially morning and especially night, talking about getting good sleep. So
Yeah.
maybe having some boundaries around that as well to protect
Yeah.
that rest and restoration we all need.
Yeah. Totally. Great point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then my final one is think about how well you're nourishing your body and yourself. So that could be food, drink, products, skin products, supplements, because what we use and consume really matters. And as you spoke about, it can affect our hormones and our health so much.
Yeah. Oh, they're brilliant tips. I really like those. And they're quite different as well. And I really do like the lighting up one. And that's something for me which would never have been like Nicola 1.0. That just wasn't my vocabulary and how I lived. And I
Yeah.
do think, again, lots of women are probably in that same kind of place,
Mm.
and finding something that you love. And I've been exploring this a little bit, and I have been thinking about doing tap dancing. I did mention this to a guest a while ago, Melanie, and I was kind of committing to it and I haven't done it. But yeah, I think bringing something back, as you said, maybe from when you were younger that you
Mm.
used to enjoy.
Mm.
My family laugh because I get the recorder out, and I don't know why, but it just really does light me up. And I think it's because I played it as a child. I was quite musical actually as a child. I played the cornet, and then I went on to the euphonium, which are both brass instruments. I played the
Oh,
glockenspiel, the record, and I can get the recorder out, and I play London's Burning. But then at Christmas, I was like, I actually think I can remember how to play Away in a Manger, and it's just stored there in my brain. And the fact I think I
wow.
can remember is a thing that lights me up at the age I'm at as
Oh.
well, with all of the memory problems menopause brings. But yeah, I think it's just so important to find something like that fun, fulfilling
Yeah.
element, isn't it? And
Yeah.
there are a lot of things available in the world we live in right now, which
Yeah.
also could bring community, which is important for many women.
Yes.
Yeah, I think there's some, I did a wreath making workship at Christmas and did it the year
Mm.
before. And now it's our Christmas tradition for me and my daughter. And
Oh,
it's
nice.
brilliant. And I'd never, ever, ever describe myself as creative. But I think
Mm.
that comes in lots of forms, doesn't it? And so
Yeah.
yeah, love that you've brought that up. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Oh, I've loved the conversation, Lucy. It's been fantastic.
Me
So if
too.
someone would like to find out more, I can obviously pop everything into the show notes, but where's the best place to connect with you and yeah, just check out what you share?
Thank you. Yeah, I would say it's Instagram, really. So yeah, I'm on Instagram at Lucy Wild Coaching.
Brilliant. And as I say, I'll pop the links below. And Lucy has a podcast of her own, which maybe, as you've
Yes.
heard, the F bomb dropped a few times. What's the name
Yeah.
of your podcast?
Yeah, that's another place to find me, actually. My weekly podcast, and it's called Mum's Fucking Matter. It's got stars on, effing matter, but yeah, Mum's Fucking Matter is my
Yeah.
weekly podcast.
Oh, brilliant. Well, check that out if that might be something again to have that little time for you and maybe pop it in your ears and get out on a little walk or just take a bit of space for yourself on an evening and yeah, see if you
Mm,
can find something that brings a smile to your face listening to Lucy.
I hope so, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, thanks so much for your time and your energy. That's been fantastic.
Thank you for having me. It's been
You're
wonderful. I've really
welcome.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too.